Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by www.employeeescapeplan.com. And specifically, Joe Nicasio is a guy who's really a stand for people to have businesses that work, especially startups and solopreneurs. If you want to have more customers pay you more money more often, Joe is your guy. I've personally worked with him. Just last weekend, we had an amazing breakthrough on my own coaching business, getting the positioning right. So I highly recommend Joe. And if you want to engage in your greatest possible self, definitely go have a conversation with Joe. www.employeeescapeplan.com and let him know that you heard about him from Chris. Now, for the man of the hour, Mr. Jay Wong. Jay Wong is a serial entrepreneur, business advisor, real estate investor, and host of the Inner Changemaker, rated #1 self-help podcast on iTunes. He's interviewed people like Bob Proctor, Lisa Nichols, Sean Stevenson, Grant Cardone, and many, many other amazing people. He recently got named as one of the top 40 millennial influencers to follow in 2018 and regularly inspires audiences of entrepreneurs, change makers, and thought leaders at some of the most prestigious conferences and seminars around the world. Jay Wong is the man, and he's about to deliver some gold in your face, ladies and gentlemen. Jay, are you ready to rock this?
No pressure. Really stoked to be here with you guys.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be here. It's going to be a lot of fun. Man, I was just looking at your episode list on your show yesterday,
yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, how the heck did he interview like all these people? So, dude, it's amazing. I really acknowledge you for playing at the level that you're playing at, and in a short amount of time, getting to where you are, dude. So, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to share this with our audience, man.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about what you're doing. You're probably going to catch me in terms of, the amount of interviews that you're doing. So just really excited to be able to come in and share the virtual stage with all of you guys.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So we're going to start diving in real quick. And before we get to your story and some of the challenges that you've gone through to get to where you are today, the theme of today is hustle and flow. And we've been seeing this balance between hustle and driving and burning it up and grinding and doing whatever it takes to create and build an empire. And then also there's the other side of the spectrum, which is, creation and manifestation, flow, ease, divine timing, all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious, what is your perspective on those two subjects, and how do you see them relating to each other and coming together?
Yeah, Chris, when I hear about hustle and flow, I wrote down literally, I was taking notes as you were talking. One thing that comes to my mind is the word momentum, right? And one of my virtual mentors, now friend, Alex Sharfin, he's huge. Yes. You should have him on the show, by the way.
Yes,
he's huge. Yeah, he's a huge proponent of this. And I started working with him to figure out how to not just have, I think we all have those days, right? Especially if you're watching a show like this, if you're drawn to Chris's message, or maybe my work, or you're into the personal development world, chances are that that when you get going, you could light it on fire, whatever it is, right? On stage, writing a book, creating videos, doing interviews. That if you can get into right flow, all of a sudden you're going to be, it's going to be really tough to beat you, right? Yep. Now, the question becomes, how do we automatically tap into that a lot more than just waiting until flow hits us, or trying to wait for us to be in that creative zone,
Being reactive.
And being reactive to life, right? Because if you're reactive to life, life it's happening. Yeah. Right. Every single thing is happening. There could be an emergency. There could be, a dog coming into the room, kids coming into the room. You're trying to get so many things going. And I always think back to Steve Pressfield. He wrote the War of Art.
Yes.
Yeah, War of Art. Because I always get it twisted.
The Art of War, Sun Tzu, and the War of Art.
Yeah. And I always think about, he had so many great examples in that book, but he always talked about the amateur versus the pro, right? Yes. And I think when it comes to hustle and flow, so hustle is kind of like, I want to do it, I am going to make it happen. But I think you're transitioning from amateur to pro, right? Pro is, it's happening regardless, regardless of how good looking my hair, if I have a pimple or whatever, like if it's raining outside, if we can't get Wi-Fi going, like I'm running the Starbucks, like it is going down, right?
Yes.
So I think hustle is really great to actually get you in momentum, but I think we could dive into it, into this interview if you want.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of tactical things that people can execute on, very, very simple things from a high performance perspective that will actually it can't guarantee, but it's definitely going to ensure that you're way more aligned to be in flow. And that's how I get a lot of my energy. Wow. We wake up, Chris, we've had conversations around this, but we wake up, there's so many more bad days than good days. Right. And it's not to be a pessimist, it's not to say, I'm going to throw in the towel early, but it's to know that, it's to acknowledge that the journey that we're on, it's to honor that, to say, it is going to be tough as heck to do what it is that we want to do, to get our message out there, to have a life that we've never had before. We're going to have to do things that we've never done before. So those are just some of my initial thoughts. But
I love that. I love that. And we'll dive into your story in just a second. And I really love that because you talked about culture, right? What is the culture of hustle and flow? The culture right now is you got to grind. Like that is the predominant culture, that your days are going to suck, that you have to really stretch and push and exert lots of force to be able to create an empire, when we could have an entire world, an entire paradigm around like, hey, this is just what you do. You just go out there and create. You just are an empire builder. You were born with these skills, abilities, and knowledge. Like, just draw it out, dude. Like, you already got it. Come on, it's a no-brainer, right?
It's that ageless battle of scarcity thinking versus abundance, right? And I remember I fell huge into this. I know in the beginning, when I first actually got started, I was trying to make it as a speaker. Because it was the only, I didn't know anything about online marketing. I didn't know anything about podcasting, didn't know how to upload a video. Like it was bad. It was bad. Like a lot of people that are watching this right now, replay live, like you guys are probably so much better like than where I was when I first started. But I started with this idea that I wanted to overcome fear. I wanted to overcome my scarcity beliefs. I wanted to overcome my own limitations. And as I've gotten deeper and deeper on this journey, I've realized that it's actually it's never even about that. It's not about overcoming those fears, not about those limitations. It's understanding that you're enough now. And it's to learn how to dance with those fears. It's to learn how to dance with those limitations, to be nervous anyways and to still show up, and to be scared and still be able to push yourself to do things you've never done before. I think that's the name of the game that we're playing.
Yes. And I love that you said dance, because really it's like you're receiving whatever life gives to you. Like you don't have a choice of what life is going to throw at you, but you do have a choice of how you respond to it, how you receive it, how you embrace it, how you dance with it, how you flow with it. So I love that. Jay, this is awesome. Such a great start to the interview. And before we get any further, let's catch people up on your journey, how you got to where you are today, interviewing these amazing stars and just building an epic life, teaching people how to influence and become change makers. Dude, catch us up, man.
Yeah, I look back on the last few years and I feel amazingly blessed and humble to have done some of the things that I kind of set out to do. But I also feel that I've barely scratched the surface. I know that's it's a little bit cliche, but I think it's actually a privilege to get to zero. I look at my story and I don't think it's any different than a lot of people's, where I started with very little knowledge of the current industry that I'm in. My relationship with entrepreneur, I didn't grow up becoming an entrepreneur. I wish I could, be a little cooler and tell you that, I was doing all the cool entrepreneurship things when I was younger. The truth is I wasn't, right? I think I was always trying to fit in, trying to find my voice, trying to, figure out a level of confidence and figure out who I was. Yeah. And I think a lot of us go through that. In fact, my relationship with entrepreneurship was never that great. My parents, they were entrepreneurs themselves. They had a couple successful ventures, but they had one that ultimately they had to declare bankruptcy on. And I remember being in high school and watching my parents, having to sell off their business, having to declare bankruptcy, not really understanding, what I can do to help, how can I support, and watching and seeing them. And that really put our family at at financial risk for multiple years. But I look at the last few years, and it's really amazing. I always talk about this, that podcasting was one of those vehicles that it is such a great business hack, because it got me the chance to, connect with individuals like yourself. It got me a chance to interview some of my own heroes before I had a business, before I had products, before I even knew what my message was. Yeah. It gave me that arena that I could practice in, that I could hone my message, that I could find my voice, right? Yeah. But it's also been such a great life hack. Mm-hmm. It's gotten me in the room. Oh yeah. A lot of times I look around. I have a friend, Jason Gaynard. He says, he always says, he runs this event called Mastermind Talks. Mm-hmm. And he always says that if you are the smartest person in the room, you're most likely in the wrong room. Mm-hmm. Right. And in the last few years, I can tell you that that has happened very little to me, where I've looked around the room, and I always have thought to myself, how did I get here? Like, how did that, did I bribe someone? Like, how did I even get in? Who invited me here? Like, let me just double check. Right. I don't want people, I think a lot of times when people see other people being interviewed or other speakers, right? I do make a living sharing this message and going around helping companies not just launch podcasts, but a lot of times helping them step into that best version of themselves, helping leaders tap into that. And as I do that, I think a lot of times people have this stipulation or this idea of the other person has it so well put together. The person on stage, I really, really want to kind of copy their blueprint and figure it out. But the truth is, it's chaotic, but it's beautiful at the same time, right? Yep. And it's this endless journey of constantly reframing, constantly doing things, being willing to tweak things on the fly, being willing to create, to put yourself out there. That's what has happened in the last couple of years. I started the podcast about 2.5 years ago. I literally had no startup capital, was doing it out of my parents' living room at that time. And to my surprise, when we launched, you mentioned the whole new and noteworthy thing. We were number 1 on iTunes for a while, but that was a huge catalyst for me because it helped me. It got me invited to speak at podcasting conferences. It got me invited to speak at social media conferences. From there, we started helping business owners to actually launch podcasts. And now, with the interviews that and the collaborations that we've had, you've mentioned some of the people, but literally Bob Proctor, huge, kind of hero of mine, Lisa Nichols, who we just released her episode this morning, but literally my favorite episode that out of literally the 160 something interviews that we've done, Grant Cardone, Sean Stevenson, the list really does go on. Yeah. And I've really compiled a lot of their patterns, a lot of what has made them successful. And now I get a chance to actually share that with leaders and people like you guys. So that's kind of my story in a gist. But I love to dive into that a little further and be able to serve you guys in a deeper way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what was the biggest lesson or the biggest thing you had to let go of or overcome along this journey to get to where you are today?
I think we all suffer from, the internal voices, right? I remember when I was first starting out, just those voices of saying, hey, who do you think you are to do this, right? You're not good looking enough to do this. You're not charismatic enough to do this. You definitely don't have the knowledge base. You didn't come from a successful startup. You didn't write a New York bestseller yet. You didn't, you don't have any experience. You're too young. Maybe you're too old. If you look at a bunch of young kids that are crushing it. Right. And, you don't sound that great on a mic. You tend to ramble on, right? You have no framework. You don't have the knowledge, right? And so I think I always get asked that question, but I think that is the biggest hurdle of all. Yeah. It's not necessarily one thing or the other. It's all of dealing with those fears, dealing with those limitations. I think when we first begin, that's the biggest test, because you're right. My parents didn't believe in me. They don't even know what a podcast is, and you're going to have tons of friends, tons of coworkers, people in your life, people you went to high school with, people you used to work with. They have no clue they have no idea what you see. right? And I think the biggest obstacle for me personally was overcoming that, of getting over myself, of stepping into not a new reality, but being comfortable with who I was, stepping into that and just being comfortable with me, allowing myself to be me, allowing myself to not be grammatically correct and not necessarily have the perfect script, and, to allow myself to run wild in these interviews and still be able to find a way to deliver value, but in my own way. I think that's the biggest challenge, especially for people that are starting out. For people that are in the game, it's not like that goes away. I think you just get a lot better at reframing and leveraging that and channeling that in a lot better ways.
I love it. And you said something there about delivering value, and stuck out to me because you have a certain perspective about delivering value. I have a certain perspective. Everyone does. So,
Sure.
Jay, what's your perspective on how you deliver the most value for an audience, for your audience, or just audiences in general?
You mean like in content, or just my perception in what is value?
What is value?
Okay. I remember when I was first starting out, Chris, I would go to I would go to as many events as I could possibly go to and get invited to, so sometimes I'd be at dinners with other entrepreneurs. Sometimes I'd go to meetups, and it would, every single time, because I was starting out, I had no idea how to make money, right? And I would go to these events, and whatever the topic was, Facebook ads or funnels or, building your personal brand, whatever it was, I would be that guy raising my hand in the back. I'm like, I understand what you're saying. I think that's really great. But how do I make money? How do I use what you just told me to make money? Because I'm not really connecting it. I'm a slow learner, So break it down for me. And everybody used to tell me the same thing. And this is maybe some of you have heard this, right? Which is like, hey, Jay, if you find a way to deliver value, your money will take care of itself. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I have you guys heard that?
Yes.
I don't know if anybody,
yes.
And in the beginning, it seems really simple now looking back, right? But in the beginning, I was like, that sounds really great, but tell me again, how do I make money? Well, Jay, if you create value in the marketplace, it's money. Look, at the end of the day, money is a form of value, right? Money, it's this energetic form. So if you're able, in my opinion, of creating value, of actually changing someone's perspective, of giving knowledge that you have by sharing your experiences, by sharing your stories, by sharing your message with everything that you've gone through, and you're able to help someone maybe think through their situation. You're maybe able to give a little bit of insight. If someone listens to this, I love, by the way, that you do this for 12 hours, but I actually think sometimes if someone listens to this and they get one idea, they get one insight,
just one,
you're good, go and work on that one insight. So to me, I look at it as if you can find a way to authentically share your perspective, your story, your message with the world, that in itself is valuable. You might not find it valuable because you already know it, right? But that in itself is value to someone who does not. Wow. A lot of times I think when people start out, they go, I have no value. I don't have the credentials. I don't have the degree. I don't have the experience. I'm too young, too old, right? They go through all this thing. But if you think back, if you graduated high school, for example, I don't know, maybe hopefully you graduated from high school, or for example, and someone is wanting to go into high school, right? Yeah. Could you not give that person some value? Did you not say, hey, you know what? I would do this a little differently. Or maybe I'd raise my hand more, right? Whatever it is, right? So that in itself is value. The way I think in how do we create value, I think people just sharing. People sharing very authentically and very honestly and saying, hey, today I had a bad day, and this is what I do on bad days. I get out a sheet of paper and I do this, I have this grid thing, and I fill out the grid. I go for a walk, whatever it is, right? Whatever works for you. And by sharing that, assuming I have a bad day and I see that, Chris has this new strategy on bad day. I'm having a bad day. Yeah. Maybe I can use it, right? Yeah. Boom. I just got some value.
Dude, you just gave me a great idea for a lead magnet. Thank you. You just shared some value.
Yeah. Hope that was valuable for everyone.
Dude, that
so
was
if you're watching this, let us know in the comments, was that valuable, right? Yes. Is that a good definition of value?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Jay, we also were talking about being a change maker, right? That's your main your main
Yeah.
message, right? The inner change maker, really drawing that out. So tell us about that. What's that vision? What are you out to create with that?
I love the question, and I appreciate the question. So I'll be honest. When I first started this a couple years ago, I wrote Changemaker movement on my website, and I was like, I have no idea what that means, right? I have a sense of what it means. I have an idea of what it means, but I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to. If Chris was to ask me that 2.5 years ago, I would be like, it's helping people create an impact. And that would be it, right? I was like, can we go to the next question? And so one thing for those of you that maybe have listened to some of my podcasts is I started doing this thing in the beginning, which I would ask every guest. I would say, hey, like, what's your definition of a change maker? And then the reason being is because, one, I was too scared to put my own definition around it.
Right.
I had way too many fears and limitations around that. So I said, hey, I'm going to take the pressure off of me. I'm going to ask, Tom Bilyeu. I'm going to ask Grant Cardone. I'm going to ask, Patrick Bet-David. I'm going to figure out their answers and see what they say. And as the show progressed, the theme has always been this idea of legacy over currency. People that are thinking long term, that are building out long term, and over kind of the short term gains, right? And that sounds really cool, right? A lot of people that they hear that like, oh wow, like that's nice. Yeah. And I would say like the evolution for me the last year is I've come to realize after hundreds of interviews, I've come to realize that the best of the best, the millionaires, the billionaires, the Olympians, the New York bestsellers, like the people you look up to the most, they actually don't care. They don't think about legacy as much as you would think they do. Meaning that they don't do things because they think if I do X, then maybe someone's going to build a statue in remembrance of me. You know what I mean? They don't think about it like that. No. And what they think about is that they try to just help as many people as they can. Like at the simplest form, that's what they're trying to do. And for me, earlier this year, I came to a realization that, I think everything comes down to us being able to tap into the best versions of ourselves when it matters the most. Like, why are you learning all these things? Why are you reading all the books? Why are you doing all these interviews? Why are you trying to build a business, right? It's because you're trying to be a really great, like the best version of yourself when the right moment comes. And instead of trying to focus and trying to obsess on like, how do I change the world? How do I chase down Elon Musk? And how do I, become the next Amazon? Like instead of focusing on that, which I think a lot of people get stuck on and you get overwhelmed by and you never end up doing anything, why don't you just become the best version of yourself so that you can look at the people in your life? You can look at your boyfriend, girlfriend. You can look at your brothers and sisters. You can look at your parents and you could say, how can I become the best version of myself so that I can impact those people around me? I can change their world rather than aiming to change the world.
Dude, I want to jump into that because one of the biggest points of struggle and contention for me has been around my family, right? I've been developing myself into this epic leader, and I'm taking all these seminars, and I know myself as a powerhouse on interviews, in the seminar room with my clients, all that. But when it came to my family, I was just like this little small kid, this shrimpy kid who didn't make a difference because that's how I felt when I was growing up. I was like, I don't want anything to do with my parents. Don't want anything to do with my family. Leave me alone. Like, I just want to stay in my bubble, play video games, and I don't really love you guys anyway, so just go away. Meanwhile, they're giving me all the love in the world, and I just like pushing it away.
Sure.
So I recognize over the last 5 or so years since I started doing personal development, who I've been is I say that I want to, empower my family. I say that I love my family. I say that, we have a close family. We have a great family. But in reality, I wasn't taking the actions that backed that statement up, that I love my parents. My parents would wait months before I'd call them just within the last year. Like less than a year ago, I wasn't talking to my parents months and months and months because they moved out to Texas and, we lived in different cities, so I didn't have as much opportunity to talk to them. And I started recognizing that it wasn't a priority. Number one, I wasn't making a priority. But two, who I knew myself as was this small little shrimpy, can't make a difference person who can't pick up the phone and call. And I had a huge breakthrough with this about a month and a half ago when I said, Mom, Dad, my sister Bree, we're doing Zoom calls every single week, just about whatever. Every single week, we're going to jump on these video calls and stay connected, share what we're grateful for, share what we're struggling with, and just share and connect, because I'm freaking committed that we have a great life and our lives are constantly getting better. And that is something I never did before just recently, but it took so much like expansion, and we think that like we're out to empower these clients and our audiences, our social media, all that kind of stuff. But what I've noticed is the people closest to us, our family, our parents especially, those are the people who we want the most respect and love from, even if we act like we don't. And when we don't get it, it hurts so much. So it was just such a huge victory, man, because I got to transform something that was so close to me that I had been kind of like putting to the side, like, oh, I'm just going to build my business. I just want money. I just want to impact. I just want to, help people. But meanwhile, I wasn't helping the people closest to me with the skills and knowledge and abilities that I had gained.
Chris, man, it's fire, bro.
Boom,
fire.
Boom.
I mean, look, like that's massive. Like that is massive. Like I hope everyone watching this live or replay, like whatever, like, or listening to this, like that. Actually know a lot of people that would disagree. That would say, hey, if you're a man or you're a woman on your path, on your journey, you go to where you need to go. And if they come along, they come along. If they don't, they don't. It's not your responsibility to bring them along. Right. And I do agree to some extent. But I also think from another vantage point, I say, you know that quote, excellence is a habit. Yeah. Right? Excellence is a habit. Like when the camera shuts off, I don't want – it's not like I want to go and be like a different Jay Wong. Like I want to be like this Jay Wong. Like I want to be the truest version of myself in all areas of my life. I might not be the best person at working out, but guess what? I'm going to bring the same mentality that I bring to business in my workouts. Yes. Just because I can't lift as much, just because I'm not going to be the world's greatest like Olympic lifter it has no difference on like how I show up, my attitude in showing up. Yes, going back and trying to, revert your parents' thinking. I'm not trying to change my parents. Right. Like that's the thing. I think that's a huge distinction, because a lot of people go, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. I'm going to cut these people out of my life. I don't have time to like change them. I'm not changing them. Man, it's tough enough trying to change yourself. You know what I mean? Yep. That's the truth. Yep. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be better. I'm going to go above and beyond. I'm going to be a leader for my own family. I'm going to be a leader for those that I interact with. Yep. And I'm going to choose to do that. And yes, it's a choice. And by choosing to do that, I'm going to tap into the best version of myself, whether they accept it and whether they love it or acknowledge it. But I know I did it for me. I did it because I'm in alignment with who I am. I'm in alignment with being one of the top leaders in this industry and getting my message out there and helping as many people. So like, it goes back to what you were saying. Like, I think you become, to me, you become a bit inauthentic if you're like, I want to help as many people as possible. But when it comes to like my parents, that you don't understand. They have, scarcity thinking, or they have this traditional view of like viewing the world. It's like, it's part of the response. Like if you raise your hand, okay, if at any point you go, I'm going to get on stage, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to put my voice out there, I'm going to create a podcast, I'm going to create a blog. Like you are raising your hand and you're saying, look, world, I have a message for you. I'm a leader with something to show, and I want to be able to share my story. It doesn't mean I have to be the world's best, right? But I want to share my story. That's what you're saying. And I think you're inauthentic if you don't look at the people in your life and say, how can I make a difference for them? Now, does that mean that you have to be on, 24/7, like at their attention and kind of making sure everything's great? No, I think there's a balance to everything, right? But I do think it is our responsibility as leaders to say, hey, how could I go above and beyond and take care of the people around me as well?
Wow, that's beautiful, man. And I love the balance, because earlier we were talking about the hustle and the flow mentality, right? Like having that balance. And there's also this balance of knowing when we're really being ourselves with people and thinking that, hey, I'm fully self-expressed with my family. I'm fully like showing up as the leader that I know I can be. And then like really seeing that that's not the case. I know for me, like I thought I was doing my best, but really there's like a lot of subconscious self-sabotaging beliefs and blind spots that had me not be able to recognize that. So I'm curious, Jay, like, where do you see people getting into these blind spots of having to like hustle and work super hard, and then how can they transition into a more of a flow mentality, a flow state?
So I think I love the question. Truth is, you're going to have to work super hard, to get to where you are. I know it sounds really simple, sounds really, but here's the thing. Here's something that gets brought up on my podcast literally every episode. Mm-hmm. Common sense is never common practice. Common sense is never common practice. So what does that mean? It means the most obvious things sometimes is the answer. And because we're humans and we feel like we need to conquer things and we need a challenge, like it can't possibly be that easy, right? In fact, when you set a lot of those goals, if any of the goals that we randomly just kind of threw out there, if that resonate with you, chances are it's going to take 5 times, 10 times longer than you even think it's going to take. Yep. And that's just the truth. And like, trust me, as a young person, I despise the word patience. But it's true, right? Yes, but it's true. Yes. Like, you have to have patience to like play it out, to like actually play the long game, to like see how you're going to evolve, to constantly look at what you're doing and to review what did you say you were going to do. You know what I mean? Just like really basic things like that. So I think the difference is if you're just going to hustle all the time, I think most people, unless you're wired in a certain way, like literally unless you've wired yourself where like if you're hustling, you get dopamine, you know what I mean? And you get like serotonin. It's going to be hard for a lot of people, especially if they have families, if they have, if they're working a job, like it's just going to be difficult because guess what? You only have a finite amount of energy in each day, right? You only have I forget what they call this, but you only have like it's the decision-making muscle, right? You can only make so many great key decisions, that's why you see Mark Zuckerberg or, people like Steve Jobs and like they wear the same thing all the time because they don't even want to think about what, to waste one decision on what it is that I want to wear today, right? So knowing that you have a finite amount, I think the game is in optimizing. It's in high performance. It's in how do you have the same level of sustained energy, whether we're doing this at 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. and whatever time zone, like if I said yes, I'm going to be there. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And like it's that commitment. So, tactically, I drink tons of water, tons of water. I think I saw you had a water bottle there as well. Right. More? So something super simple that not a lot of people will do, right? Because they're like, oh, yeah, I've heard that for like years, Jay, years. And like, so how much do you actually hydrate yourself, right? Another simple one that I think a lot of people overstep or don't really think about is getting up. Every 60 to 90 minutes. Yeah. Some people are even more prolific. Yeah. They get up every 45 minutes and they stretch for like 10, 15 minutes. But the reason being you want to do those things, oxygen and water, hydration, is because you want, like every time you get that brain fog, every time you feel a little tired, feel a little sluggish, that's what's happening most of the time to your body, is that you're not getting enough hydration or you're not getting enough oxygen so that your brain is optimizing at a level. So that's why it's harder for you to make decisions. It's harder for you to think about, making very smart decisions, right? So those are some of the things that I think about when you think, how do you differentiate by hustle, and how do you actually create flow, is like getting optimized and getting into the right flow of things. Another one is doing really important things like as the only thing in the morning, doing the most important task, creating that priority for yourself so that you tackle that first things first, and that becomes like a massive win for you. You build momentum off of that, right? Yes. Like I could sit here, and jam with you, and I'm not like stressing out on the on the main priority thing because I already attacked it. You know what I mean? And it's like it's kind of like subconsciously it's a win for me. So like anything that happens in the afternoon is like, oh man, that's so gravy. You know?
Yeah. Just icing on top. Exactly. I love it. I love it, man. So you were talking about flow there, and I'm curious because you're all about change makers, creating more change makers, and what would it take to have a continuous, faster flow of change makers being born into the world? Like, what would it take for people to to start stepping up and seeing more change makers around us, like really step up and take that responsibility for their life and for the lives of the people around them?
This is a really good question. And the answer is actually, it's super simple. But let me, so I remember, I'll share just a really quick story. I remember when I was first starting out, I had this whole hustle and flow thing I really struggled with, because I like typical overachiever, you know, like you say yes to a bunch of things, right? And you're like,
figure out how later.
I'm gonna do it all this weekend, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna launch it all, and it's gonna be great, and you're like optimistic as heck, right? So it's like, what happened with me was that I was like staying up overnight, you know, like I would be waking, you know, some days I'd wake up at noon, but it's not because I was like lazy. It's because like I went to bed at like 6 a.m., you know, and then I'm like expecting myself to attack, you know what I mean? Like the day the same, but you're all like weirded out. You're drinking 2 or 3 coffees. Now your anxiety is like super high. So like now like the day is like gone. So like I was going through that whole motion, right? Like just a negative tailspin of this. And some days I would have amazing momentum, and then I would have like 2 days of like, just, you know, like, I don't know, what seemed like almost depression. You know what I mean? And it's like, and then you know, you go to those conversations where like, should I be, you know, like, should I be doing this? You know, like, am I really that smart? I'm not that smart, you know, like, and you start like getting into that, like, oh my God, I need to like chat with someone, right? Yeah. And it's kind of like the whole roller coaster of actually being a business owner and being an entrepreneur, especially if it's like your first couple times, like it's so scary. I remember I talked to my friend about this. His name is Shannon Graham. Some of you might know him, some of you don't. But he's a pretty awesome coach, and he wasn't like coaching me like in a formal way. But we had, you know, met up the week before, and we were just kind of like, you know, chatting. And he's like, "What are you struggling with right now, Jay?" And I said, "So Shannon, I'm really struggling with all my habits. You know, like I'm not eating. It's like some days I'm not eating, and the days that I do eat, I'm eating terribly. Like I can't go to sleep early. Like I can't wake up early. You know, like it's just this compound effect of all the things I can't do." And he said, "Okay, cool. Let me switch it up for you. And so let me ask you guys. Like he this is what he asked me. He said, what is something that you won't ever do? Like you just won't. Like it's just not a part of you. You're never gonna do it. Like you'll always say no. Like what's something?" I don't know, for you, Chris, that you would just say no. Any ideas?
I guess most case scenarios, I would not like cross dress and like put like makeup on my face and go out to a club.
Good. Sometimes I do this when I do like talks and trainings. Right. People will say like skydiving, you know. Right. And I was like, man, they have such like great answers. Like I said, hard drugs. That was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, hard drugs, you know, like heroin, cocaine. I was like, I'm not really into that scene, like, nor am I planning, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't, like, it's just not. He goes, okay, good. And Chris, like, that's good. We can use that as an example. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? And for me, I looked at it and I go, well, it's just not, it's not what I do. It's not what Jay Wong does, you know? Right. And he goes, there's your answer. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I don't have I don't understand. And he goes, look. Have you ever heard that quote? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yeah. Right? Who's heard that quote? Yeah. So if you guys have heard that quote, then think back to if you've ever set a goal and you've never achieved it, right? Every New Year's resolution ever, you know? If you ever wrote down that you want to like 10x your business, your finances, your relationships, whatever it is, and then like you fell short, right? So anytime anyone sets a goal, they want to go Hollywood. They want to go big, right? They want to go like, this is exciting. It's compelling. When you first draw the vision, it's always exciting, right? In a world where we are inundated and there is literally an abundance of content, I think we're lacking more and more context. Meaning that if you want to set these large goals, I think that's really great, but having just intention of doing it is not enough. So what's missing? What's missing, and what he was trying to say with me, is that your identity is misaligned with what you are saying, right? I won't ever do hard drugs because it's not who I am. So if you want to wake up earlier, if you want to eat right, if you want to have sustained levels of energy, you want to be able to train, what do you do? Like, what's the identity that you have to step into? And for me, I started looking at it and I said, what is that identity? And I started looking at myself as an athlete. I started looking at myself as a high performer. You know why? Because what do athletes do? They go to bed early. They wake up early. They train. They train their mind. They train their, physical. They train their spirit, right? Like they read. They're always learning. They're always practicing. They're showcasing. They're working on form. They're working on the small stuff. So like that was the identity. Once I shifted that in my mind, I said, you know what? I'm not Jay Wong. The idea, like I'm not the entrepreneur that hustles 24/7 because that was my idea of what an entrepreneur was. I'm Jay Wong, the entrepreneur that is an athlete. I'm Jay Wong I'm a high performer, right? And this is one of the biggest things we always talk about when people join, let's say like they work with me on, we have a podcast accelerator, so if you don't know anything about podcasting, you want to launch one, you do that course. But one of the first things we talk about is now you wrap your head around the idea that I'm a podcaster, I get a mic. I got the right tech. Like I'm going to interview people like Chris Burns and light it up. You know what I mean? Like you are a podcaster. You are not someone who's trying to figure out podcasting. You're not someone who's trying to like look at this as a hobby. You are a podcaster. That's it. Right? And the second they wrap their head around that, boom, all of a sudden they know everything. That's what a podcaster's they have these conversations, right? They get people on. What do they do after they have the interview? They share it with the audience. They share it with people that's relevant. What do they do to build a community? They create an email list. They create a Facebook group. Like all of a sudden, it all makes sense. And it's not about learning each of these tactical things. So taking all of this and going all the way back to your question, how do people become change makers? Super simple. First step is identifying yourself as a leader. Of saying, hey, I'm going to be a leader for those around me. I'm going to be a leader whether my parents had, whether my family had money or did not, whether my family knew what gratitude, love, personal development was or did not. I'm going to be a leader for them. I'm going to be a voice of reason for them. I'm going to share my perspective with them relentlessly because I love them. And what about this? What about other people? What about my community? I'm going to be a leader for them as well. If you have a company, I'm going to be a leader. You have to look your team in the face and say, I'm going to lead them when times are uncertain, when the economy is bad, when we made a couple bad decisions over here, when things are breaking, like I'm going to be the leader for them. I'm going to be able to solve it for them and I'm going to be able to figure it out. That's how you figure out how to do anything. That's how you actually step into being a change maker.
Wow. That's incredible, man. I love that. And
was that cool?
Yes, that was gold. Freaking gold. Everyone type in the comments gold if you thought that was gold, because Jay just that was beautiful. I love the story. I'm like studying you, Jay. I'm like, okay, how did he do this? Like he still answered the question. He brought personality to it. I love it. It's awesome. It's awesome.
It's the hair. It's the hair.
I'll get a wig. Don't worry. So Jay, I want to know, and we want to know, you're working with these amazing people. What did it take to be appealing to them, for them to say yes, for them to, play with you, regardless of whatever level you're at, whatever, what did it take for you? How did you show up? How did they say yes to you?
This is a beautiful question because I think it ties in so well to so many of the things that we've discussed, from identity to value, right? I think for me in the very beginning, before I figured out that whole identity piece, I had to figure out that I'm someone of value. I'm someone that is worthy of somebody's time, that I'm not just taking their time. I remember I used to just kind of a traditional way of mentorship, or I had this idea of mentorship, right? So I would ask, I think a lot of people probably would understand or relate, I hope, or else I'm just a huge weirdo, which I'm open to as well. But I used to ask tons of times. I'm like, oh my God, hey, you're so successful, or you're someone I want to connect with. Can I buy you a coffee? Can I buy you lunch? Can I buy you dinner? Can I get your dry clean? I don't know, whatever, right? Can I just be around you? Right. And I remember always feeling like I would have to trade. You know what I mean? Meaning if I buy them a coffee, then they would trade their 15 minutes or 30 minutes with me. because I'm someone that is not of value, right? Like
who I am is not enough for them. Just
not
to say
enough,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like, let me buy your time. And I totally, with that said,
Yeah.
there are tons of instances and tons of times where it is in your benefit to pay for someone's expertise and coaching so that you could fast track to success. But I'm talking about a worthiness issue here, a state of mind where you're not feeling worthy. Because the question was, how do I get these people to play with me and collaborate with me? Is that I first have to believe that hanging out with me, spending the minutes with me is of value to them. It doesn't matter what size of email list I have. It doesn't matter what the show listeners were. I didn't even have a show, I didn't even have an email list the first 3 months. I know, cardinal sin of online marketing. But I didn't have those things. But I genuinely believed, I hit a point where I go, look, if you spend this time with me, I will do everything in my power to get this message out there in a bigger way for you. Mm-hmm. I'm going to help drive at least one book sale, at least one, help them figure out and talk with a community, talk with my community, right? And hopefully I reached out to people that would, our messages would be, there would be an overlap,
right?
You know what I mean? There would be some type of value add for them, right? And a lot of times people came on to promote their books, to promote their courses, to promote their message. And they're willing to do that openly because I was framing it as a meeting of two valuable people. Yeah. Even if sometimes I would interview them and I really wouldn't talk that much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes I really felt like I had no value, but I had to remind myself. I had to say, hey, Jay, like you are someone who, this is like what you do as a podcaster. You are someone that's willing to ask the tough questions. You're someone who's willing to play with the big boys and girls, and we've had a couple billionaires on the show now. And every single time I still get nervous for interviews. I still get, all the same anxiety and all that. Like, are they going to find it valuable? Are they going to do these things? But I think when you think about reaching out, for mentorship or for interviews, that's the first thing, is that you have to be in the frame of mind that you're also creating value as well. And I think they can sense that.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely do believe that. I get tons of emails all the time, people pitching me to be on my show, or maybe they want me to go on their show. A lot of times I say no, because it feels so much like a transaction rather than a collaboration, Wow. And if it feels like a collaboration, then I'm more likely to say yes.
Wow. That's awesome, man. So what are your big projects, your big things you're saying yes to now? What are you working on creating? Obviously getting this Changemaker message out. Share about what you're creating, your vision for right now, and then the future, what you're creating.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to just come on and share with you guys. I think we talked about this last time, like a little off record, but I finally just released this. It was released this week as it came out with the Lisa Nichols interview, which, by the way, is a world-class interview. I actually think, I was like, I think I could stop podcasting. I'm not. I was like, but when you hit, like, you do something so good and you're like, whoo. I was like, boy, that's awesome. So what came out was I finally recorded an audio training that will help people actually step into the leader that they truly are. And we talk about, there's 3 different secrets in that audio training. It's absolutely for free. I'll be able to share that with you if you want to, be able to link it up in the show notes or what have you.
Absolutely.
We talked about one of those things, which was identity, right? And figuring out what is the identity. But there's 2 other kind of steps after that in terms of actually be able to play at a different level. I personally know that when you're able to figure this out, when you're able to kind of step into the best version of yourself, like, people will say to themselves, like, what is it about that person? What is it about Chris? Or what is it about Jay? Is it their clothes? Is it their hair? Is it they drink coffee? Like, what do they put in their coffee? Is it their workouts? Like, it has nothing to do with any of those tactical things. It has everything to do with how you're seeing the world, that internal frame. It comes back to identity. It comes back to your commitments, right? And so that's something I'm really, really pumped that we just wrapped up that and shared it with our community. And, in the future, I'm actively building this community of change makers, of people that want to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to become the best version of myself so that I could begin to impact those closest to me, And I think a lot of that comes from, confidence, comes from how you communicate, how you share your story, comes from finding your voice, which is a journey. It's a really long journey. It's a painful journey, but it's a super honorable one because a lot of people will let their gifts go by without actually figuring out who they are to be able to share that properly, And so that's what I'm obsessed on. 2018 is literally all around building my community further and helping them tap into that. Really exciting things lined up from online events to live events. So those are some of the things that I'm saying yes to.
Dude, that's awesome. And Jay, what are you most proud about yourself for right now?
Just honestly being able to do this on a Wednesday afternoon, I remember, I was thinking about this today actually. And I remember being in an office last time I was gainfully employed. And it was this amazing company called Strategic Coach. And I learned so much while I was there. But I remember there were days where I would end up watching, an interview like this, you know what I mean? Or I would be attending a webinar, or I'd be watching, some type of YouTube video. And I was in sales. And so you kind of create your own schedule. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of times I really wish that I could create that content. I didn't have a YouTube channel at the time, didn't know what a podcast was, now I look at my life and I go, wow, I have the privilege to get a chance to create what I want to create. Do we have all the cash in the world or do we have a massive team? No, there's still a million things that I'm learning and figuring out. I have coaches, that are telling me how I can get my message across better, that are tightening the way that I do things, putting systems in place. Right. But I think it's a huge privilege to have problems, to have big boys and big girl problems, and I think we should spend more time being grateful for those problems. We've had our best year. We have another, I have a business that I run with my family, which kind of goes side and side with being a leader for them. And it's in real estate investing. And this year we've had the best year we've ever had in the last 5 years. Wow. And awesome. It changed the way that my parents are looking at retirement. Do you know what I mean? It's changing what they're talking about. You know what I mean? It's changing their mindset. Is it changing them at the core? Maybe, maybe not. That's not necessarily the point. But it's being, I think I'm just proud to be in a I think we're living in just such an exciting time. I think I'm making bets on how this platform is going to evolve, how content is going to evolve. I'm just grateful for today. I'm grateful for this journey and I'm grateful for every one of my problems that I'm overwhelmed by.
Bring on the overwhelm. Means I'm doing something right.
Let's go. Let's go. More big boy problems. I was like, let's kick my butt so I can grow. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. And dude, that's not to say that you don't you transmute anything that life throws your way and turn it into gratitude, embrace it, accept it, learn to love it. You're a master at it. It's clear based on this interview, based on who you are and how you show up in the world. So, dude, Jay, keep up the amazing work, man. And seriously, thank you so much for coming on today, sharing with our audience about what it means to be a change maker, how to really stay in that creation mode, and all the stories that you have, all the personality that you bring to the table, man. It's you, and I appreciate you being your full, authentic self and empowering people, being out to empower people and build this community and make this world a better place than when we found it, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey, Chris, I really appreciate the interview. I think you did an awesome job. I was going to make a joke out earlier, but I'm going to make it now, I guess. I was going to say that I like the photo behind you because it kind of seems like you're like the phoenix. I don't know if it's like a bird or a phoenix. But I was like, oh, Chris is constantly being reborn in this interview. And I always say the best thing about interviews is that we get a chance to record our own breakthroughs.
Mm.
You know, we get a chance to record this timestamp of like when Jay was thinking in a certain way and when Chris was operating over here, and when you, the listener or watcher, you know, you were thinking in a certain way, or you were dealing with a bad day, or you were dealing with whatever, and now we have that. You know, we have like this one moment. So I think that's exciting, and I'm just excited for everyone that's watching this and consuming this. So kudos to you, Chris, and thank you again for having me on, man.
And again, they stay connected with you how?
Inner Changemaker podcast is the best, innerchangemaker.com. You guys can get access to the audio training there as well.
Cool. Awesome. Go find him on Facebook. Friend him. He's an amazing dude. Jay, we'll see you soon, man. Have the best December ever, the best 2018 ever. I'm sure we'll have you back on the show and again in the future because you're too hot to let go, man.
Yeah, I'm a little hot. I want to go change. I'm like sweating in the back. I'm just All right,
Awesome,
Chris,
man.
have fun, man.
All right. Take care, brother.
Take care.